We're going to begin in subcommittee this morning, so we can go ahead and get started with bills. If I could get a show of hands, how many are here to testify for Senate Bill 819? And then how many are here to testify for Senate Bill 918? That's okay. All right, sounds good. Well, we will begin with, look like it's pretty evenly balanced. We'll begin with Senate Bill 918. Senator Hoskins, please come forward, present when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, State Senator Denny Hoskins from the 21st District here today to present Senate Bill 918. As many of you remember, on House Bill 2 regarding public and elementary education budget bill last year, I offered an amendment to defund any public school that teaches that someone should be judged on the color of their skin and not the content of their character. Unfortunately, that amendment failed, and some of my colleagues said that they voted against that amendment because you can't legislate through the budget, even though we already included language in the budget bills that says you couldn't use that money for advertising or Common Core or things like that. So this bill is in follow-up to that. Critical race theory claims that America is systematically racist and that racism produced an alliance between working-class whites and the oppressor capitalist class, which prevented working-class solidarity. CRT holds the idea of three principles. Number one, there is no absolute truth, only competing narratives. It sees lived experiences as mattering more than facts. Two, individuals are either an oppressor or a victim. You are predetermined by characteristics such as race to fall into either category. Culture is defined by groups exercising power over each other. And the third thing that CRT teaches is America is systematically racist and must be dismantled. It sees America as having been founded on the system of capitalism, which is racist and therefore must be disrupted. When followed to its logical conclusion, unfortunately, CRT is very destructive and rejects the fundamental ideas on which our constitutional republic is based. Applying the philosophy would violate a multitude of American civil rights laws by treating people differently according to race. There was a survey that was done 2021 by DESE that asked all the schools, public schools in the state of Missouri, if they taught concepts in CRT or the New York Times 16 project that says that America is systematically racist and you're either an oppressor or a victim. Of those surveyed, there were 3 schools that said yes, they do teach either critical race theory or the 1619 project, and those 3 schools represent about 32,000 students. There's 5 schools that didn't answer, and so we're unsure if they teach those concepts. Back in from 2021, when Senator O'Laughlin was chair or vice chair of the Senate or the Joint Committee on Education, she had a quote that said, "According to evidence local parent groups have given me, taken directly from their school's curriculum, it is simply not true that only Kansas City is involved in critical race theory," Senator Cindy O'Laughlin said. What I'm trying to do is take this, what I believe is racist theory, out of our public schools, and with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for that presentation. First witness here to testify in support of Senate Bill 918. Seeing none. Any witnesses here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 918? That's okay, we don't need more show of hands. We'll just have you come up one at a time here. Make sure you fill out a witness card and proceed when ready.
Thank you, members of the committee. Sharon Gowey-Jones here today on behalf of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP and also Promo. I want to talk today a little bit about the effects that this discussion over the last 3 years has had on our school districts. The Attorney General has done multiple investigations and sunshine requests against those districts. This conversation has been happening. The DESE survey happened. And what we are seeing now is a increase in racial violence in our school districts. And I'm not talking about just name calling, although that is a major part of it. I am talking about threats of physical violence and actual physical violence against Black and multiracial children. In Republic, for example, there is now a group of 6 families who have expressed serious concern that their children are being targeted, both with extreme racial epithets, including the N-word, being used against them, as well as physical attacks against them, all just because of their race. The district's response to this has been to say that they will get demerits and detention because they're using curse words. And they refuse to address the racial nature of these attacks. That is because of these discussions. Putting things like this into law it doesn't actually keep our children any safer. What it does is it puts fear in the hearts of teachers and administrators, and they refuse to have these hard conversations. There's another incident that happened in a completely different school district on a completely different side of the state, where a teenage child who was acting as a teacher's aide in the nursery school there used the N-word against a 5-year-old girl and posted on social media that she should be sexually assaulted. That child was given a 3-day suspension. And the school district, again, refuses to discuss the racialized nature of the complaint because they are so afraid that they will be accused of teaching CRT. We have to have these hard discussions. We have to have them in our educational settings, and they have to be done in a way that is sensitive to everyone involved. I don't want any children, white, Black, or otherwise, to feel like they are targeted by their peers. This bill and the discussions we've been having around CRT are causing our Black and brown children to be targeted. And I just want everyone to keep in mind that this isn't about curriculum. This is about the children and the culture within our schools. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Senator Beck.
Yes, good morning. So I have a couple questions. You and I have actually talked about this probably 3 years ago, and we were talking about the whole CRT and how it was a high-level course, because I started looking into it a little bit when I first started hearing about it. And then when I went, hey, I'm a guy who went to high school, went to some community college, got an apprenticeship, and when I was reading it, I was like, this is like, it's kind of hard to understand, actually, the actual true CRT.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what this is, but they're just using letters to say whatever something is. And you agreed with me that you actually said it was like a graduate level, very hard to understand, and you actually said you had issues.
Correct. When I went through law school, one of the courses that was not mandatory was called Philosophy of the Law and included an entire section on CRT. And it is very much a philosophical, high-level discussion. Yeah. It's not the same as cultural competency at all.
Yeah, I think this is pushed, and I've seen this, and it's probably been around longer than that, but this was coming around in the 2020 election when I had some folks reach out to me when I was running for Senate for the first time, and they were bringing these things up to me. I had no idea what it was, and then it became this right-wing, whatever, echo chamber story. Here's my issue. Part of I don't like the entire bill, of course, but my biggest issue right now is the last page, Section 5, he giving the Attorney General any type of power, because the last 2 Attorney Generals have abused their office. The last 2 Attorney Generals have tried things on Twitter based on maybe a letter, maybe a comment. You can't sunshine them because they never give you the information. And they put these things out on Twitter, and it's not an investigation. It's just to run for a higher office or to get reelected. And that's a concern I see. And I don't know if you've seen this when you said they investigated the CRT, if that was the same thing. They didn't even, the last 2 cases were school districts in my area where they went after 2 school districts, one for the gifted program and saying that they were basically using this model here to elevate other folks that didn't deserve to be in a gifted program based on nothing. Yeah. Based on one parent who was disgruntled that their kid maybe didn't get in there. And they based that all on that. They didn't even talk to the school district first, or the Attorney General didn't talk to the school district before he prosecuted them in Twitter. So I have a problem giving him any more power than he already has. I'm not even sure that he should have the power he has because he abuses it. Not only this Attorney General, but the last Attorney General. The other school district, it was an incident, Webster Grove School District, about it was about teaching on birth control and stuff like that, and he said that the parents didn't opt in, and that was not the case. And it's super frustrating when you hear these things, and then they're just out there for sound bites and get more votes. So I know that doesn't have anything to do with this, but anything moving forward, that whole section, the Attorney General shouldn't be involved in anything, especially if you're not going to use your office the way it's supposed to be used.
Yeah. And if I may, I don't think anyone in this room thinks that children should be targeted. I don't think anyone in this room is particularly trying to take us back to the 1950s
But that's
culturally.
what this causes.
But I think that's what it causes, and I think that the fact that it's already happening and the bill hasn't even become law yet scares me.
Thank you.
Further questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you for being here
Thank
this
you.
morning. Further witnesses testify in opposition. Please come forward. Make sure you fill out a witness card and proceed when ready.
Hello, my name is Malcolm Gerhart, and I oppose Senate Bill 918. Everyone has biases. If you can form your own opinions, you have biases. Everyone here has biases. These biases are shaped by our environment and our culture, and that means if you're raised in a culture with systemic racism, you will hold these beliefs, either subconsciously or consciously. Not telling your students this is a massive disservice to them. It will not allow them to unlearn these beliefs and these practices. Throughout this bill, it targets this specific project, the 1619 project, and naming it multiple times throughout the text. So the average person reading this and not fully understanding the full context will assume that, like, wow, this is such an evil and awful thing, when in reality, this was started by the New York Times in 2019, and it wants to focus U.S. history around the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans in U.S. history. This isn't wrong. This is objectively correct history that we are teaching here and that they want to focus on. And it's important that we focus on these contributions of Black Americans, as oftentimes in our history classes, they are sidelined at best and ignored or not taught at worst. Critical race theory is also brought up several times as well, and the critical race theory that is this bill would ban is not actual critical race theory. We've talked about this several times already, but critical race theory is a theory based around legal analysis that race is a social construct that is used to oppress people of color. What this bill would be banning is history again. And also, I want to talk about a specific section of the bill, lines 48 through 53 on page 3. In today's cultural landscape, controversial topics include systemic racism and its history, as well as the rise of neo-Nazis and fascism as a whole in the United States. Any half-decent teacher is not going to both sides these items. It's just any half-decent teacher is going to agree that these are objectively wrong things, and that there's any slight positivity that came out of these events or this rise of racism and fascism is minuscule compared to its terrible, terrible effects. History is inherently political, and stripping the politics away from it is stripping the core context of what history is. And also, I want to remind everyone that students are not apolitical. When they are young, they hold on to what their parents believe, and then it is just natural that as they age, that these beliefs will conflict with the world around them, and it is their job to settle these conflicts themselves. And these conflicts will also help build the critical thinking that is vital to students and as they enter the adult world. I also want to mention that I actually do agree with a very, very small section of this bill in which it's important that students know how the government works. It is important to know how the government you live under works, and it's also important so that students know that they can do something about the government when they don't agree with what the government is doing, like coming up and doing what I'm doing here today. Finally, I just want to say I know that I did just praise a part of this bill, but that part of it is 2 lines long out of a 5-page bill. I could go on for hours on the issues of this bill, but I'm only given 3 minutes, and so I'll just wrap up and say that I urge you guys to vote no on this bill, and then I'm more than willing to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for being here this morning. We're going to pause real quickly and establish a quorum. So, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Trent. Here. Coleman. Arthur. Beck. Brown. Carter. Fitzwater. Gannon. Razor. Rowden. Thompson Raider.
All right, quorum being established. We also want to make a note, we're not going to have an executive session this morning, so if members of the committee need to move to other business, please don't feel like you have to wait for that. Further witnesses here to testify in opposition. Please come forward, make sure you fill out a witness card, and proceed when ready.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is May Hall. I'm a resident of Columbia, grew up in St. Louis. So I'm going to go ahead and skip past the sort of fundamental misunderstanding that this bill seems to have between postmodern theory and critical theory and modern theory in general, because frankly, it seems to be a bit of a tangled mess, and I don't think any of us are here to listen to a poli-sci graduate lecture on about political theory. So I'm just going to go through point by point and just sort of discuss things that I find kind of important to repudiate in this bill. One of which being the discussion, or I guess the banning of discussion that the United States would be fundamentally racist or sexist. I think it's important to note that every single original colony of the United States allowed slavery. Not to mention that the Ford Motor Company is older than women's rights to vote in this country. So I think that that kind of fundamentally establishes a baseline of when a country is founded on those principles, that's going to affect things moving forward, and that needs to be acknowledged. The acknowledgement of conscious or unconscious bias is just a well-established sociological theory that has a lot of backing. It's just kind of understood that when you grow up in a society that has inherent biases, you're going to carry those biases with you. It's not a moral judgment. It's not placing guilt or fault in these children, but it is letting them know, hey, sometimes you're going to see someone and your first instinct is going to be to think X. You should stop and maybe analyze why that is, and then you can move forward and sort of reanalyze why that is and move forward with a more accurate sort of assumption or lack of assumptions about whoever you're seeing. It discusses meritocracy and how it's linked to modern day racism and also historic racism. The discussions that are being had in those classrooms are not that meritocracy in its own right is racist. It's the discussion that when you talk about a meritocratic system without talking about systemic oppression, it can be weaponized towards marginalized groups to make them look inferior or lazy or other degrading concepts. This is, again, well-established sociological fact. As well, like I said, talking about sort of the inclination to oppress or just general like fault or blame. Again, it's not a moral claim to say that it is the responsibility of white folks to recognize implicit bias and be a part of the solution for those systems. I don't think that's a controversial take. I think it's up to all of us to build a better society, and I think that's part of where it starts. As for the 1619 project itself, my only question would be what they're so afraid of. Like it was mentioned, it's a New York Times project. It's not something that would be taught as fact. It would just be taught as another look at history. In the discussion with modern topics or having to both sides it, as another witness put, my question is very similar in the sense of when you have neo-Nazis marching in Nashville as they did last month, or you have to discuss, like I'm from St. Louis, sometimes a cop will kill a black teenager and that's going to cause discussion. I was aware of the Ferguson riots while I was in high school, and that had to be discussed. How do you both sides that history? There's really no way to discuss it accurately if you're going to also take the side of, again, like I said, a neo-Nazi march or any sort of like objectively morally reprehensible thing involving a particular like topic of race. For instance, I was an anthropology student not too long ago, and one of the things that we discussed is the history of phrenology. Obviously, it's bad science. That's the entire thing we talk about. But because of its connection to modern-day racism, what are teachers meant to do? Are they supposed to talk about the benefits of this long-debunked race science? I don't know what a teacher would have to do looking at this. The line isn't drawn. There's a part of the bill discussing that schools will not prevent discussion of the Founding Fathers or the founding documents. I don't believe that that's happening, speaking frankly. You would have to show me more than one example. I don't think it's happening. Furthermore, I don't trust the Attorney General. It's like was mentioned up there by the Senator. I find the current Attorney General to be legally unscrupulous and frankly a little bit slapdash in his work. And then finally, when discussing civic traditions and history of civic action in this country, I have to ask if that actually would be the discussion that it's being framed as. Because if it is being framed as a discussion of like genuine history of civil action and giving it its proper due and genuinely letting the students decide what they believe, I can only presume that things like Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party will be discussed, or things like Malcolm X and his actions in a way that isn't just, oh, he was the bad guy. And so I have to ask sort of where those lines are drawn. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here this morning. Further witnesses to testify in opposition? And again, if witnesses will make sure they filled out their witness card, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Perrin Dowse, and I'm here to speak in opposition to SB918. I grew up attending a very small rural Midwest school in West Missouri. When I learned about the Trail of Tears in school, I learned it as a horrific event that was all Andrew Jackson's fault individually and had nothing to do with America at large. That would be inane to teach to an adult simply for being so false and fabricated. Yet that incorrect version that I was taught was never clarified and never corrected, even in high school. But it is a version of events where they could still count on being able to crowd us all into a good old patriotic school assembly, thinking that America is the perfect nation, the saviors of the world that are immune to wrongdoing. But that is, senators, a lie. So too is the idea that racism was solved when the Civil Rights Act was passed, that anything that happened to black communities after that point was the fault of individuals and not indicative of America at large. The exact same rhetoric, the exact same lies, packaged into a message of equality. All that critical race theory is the exploration of the truth, that there are systematic causes for the effects that we see in our society, that promoting true equality takes more than what the Civil Rights Act did. Not that white people should feel guilty for the actions of others, but that the systems and institutions around us are capable of wrongdoing. Education is meant to be a place of truth. So I think it's high time that we stop lying. Please vote against SB 918. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Further witnesses testify in opposition? Seeing none. Oh, seeing one. You're slow on the draw there. Please proceed when ready.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. I always endeavor to defer to folks who have traveled some distance. Autophagy on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd speak in opposition to Senate Bill 918. Really, we would encourage the committee to consider two primary reasons why this legislation could be very problematic. The first one is you all play an important role in establishing and maintaining our public schools. In fact, it's your first constitutional duty. We're really struggling right now with getting young folks to aspire to be teachers, to recruit them into the profession, and we're really struggling to maintain and keep our current active teachers in the classroom. And so when you see legislation that is essentially putting restrictions directly into classroom discussion, it's not so much the specifics of the bill itself, but the collateral damage it causes to, first, the desire to be in that space, to be a classroom teacher, to devote your life to that, knowing that you're going to have state laws interfering on and not basically communicating. You are training as a professional educator, but the legislature has concerns about your professional judgment. So as great as those challenges in recruitment and retention are right now, bills like this really only magnify that issue. And the second is the people's aspiration is that our public schools serve an important purpose in sustaining democracy. It's not about workforce development under the Constitution. What it is about preserving the rights and liberties of the people. And as we've heard from prior witnesses, this causes teachers to look at the topics that are most central to our public schools being the place where these important discussions can be had, and says, for fear of your livelihood, for fear of retaliation, for fear of all sorts of things that might happen, don't delve deeply into these discussions. And so it really has a profound concern going forward. Are public schools going to be able to be as effective at sustaining democracy if we make our teachers afraid to engage in these discussions? For these two reasons, we think that the committee should not move forward in this bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for, seeing one. Senator Beck.
Again, I just want to state that I don't like the bill, but I did notice that this bill only applies to public schools. It doesn't apply to charters and or a voucher program. Did you notice that in there when you were looking at it?
Actually, Senator, I did notice that it only specifically speaks to school districts.
So it doesn't talk to anywhere taxpayer money is going.
For example, it wouldn't apply to public charter schools. It would not apply to schools where students are using an ESA type program.
Thank you.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that testimony. Further witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair,
Please proceed.
My name is Ron Berry. I'm here on behalf of the American Federation of Teachers. I don't know that I really have much more to add, except that I would propose a challenge. Because the bill does focus on the 1619 project, everyone has to drive home this weekend. Take the time to listen to just one of the podcast episodes and try to make a decision on your own, just based on that project.
Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for this witness? Yes, Senator Razor.
Ron, I would jump in on that and say, listen to the episode on transportation.
Sure.
Or the
listen,
last
listen
one
to the one on music.
It's unbelievable, and not only should it not be banned, it might be mandatory. I mean, it is American history.
The podcast I'm referencing there's like 5, 6, 7 episodes. There's maybe 30 to 40 minutes each. You know, we all have at least that amount of drive back home. So just an idea.
Thank you for that plug.
Any further questions? Seeing none.
Sure.
Any additional witnesses here to testify in opposition? Seeing none. Any witnesses here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
Actually, under critical race theory in the Lincoln 1619 project, when I mentioned those attributes earlier, one of them says that individuals are either an oppressor or a victim. Looking at the makeup of the committee with, we have seven white males and females, you would automatically be considered racist and oppressor under critical race theory. Everybody that testified here against the bill, because they're white, would automatically be considered an oppressor or a racist because of the color of their skin and not the content of their character. So that's what we're not trying to erase history. We're not saying you can't talk about history. What we're trying to do is say that, hey, just because you're white or you're black, that doesn't make you automatically a racist. That doesn't automatically mean that you think one way or think another way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that will conclude the public hearing on Senate Bill 918. We will next move to the public hearing for Senate Bill 819. Senator Brown may proceed when ready.
For the record, my name is Senator Ben Brown in the 26th District, and I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to present Senate Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 819. Currently, most Missouri parents who choose to take on the additional burden of homeschooling their children are not permitted to participate in sports and other extracurricular activities. This despite the fact that these parents are still required to pay the taxes to help fund these programs, while also taking on the additional investment of time and financial resources that come with providing homeschooling. As a former athlete whose life was greatly impacted by my participation in the sport of wrestling as a teenager, I feel strongly that it is wrong to deny these really potentially life-changing opportunities to children. Senate Bill 819 provides that the school district shall not prohibit a homeschool or full-time virtual student from participating in athletic and extracurricular programs that are funded in part by their parents' tax dollars. While it provides access to these programs, it also states that school disciplinary policies would still apply. This ensures that homeschool students would still be held to the same behavioral standards that their full-time public school counterparts. Any hourly attendance requirements directly tied to the sport or extracurricular activity would still be required. So, for example, an attendance in a band class, which essentially serves as the practice for that activity, would still be required. Same with activities participating to agriculture, other performing arts, etc. Given the current landscape where children are bound to a school district based on their residency, homeschooling in many cases is often the only feasible alternative for parents who reside in an underperforming district. It's not right for a child to be denied the additional enrichment and life skills that participation in youth athletics provides simply because their parents wish to take it upon themselves to ensure the quality of their child's education. I'll also just point out that this bill passed out of the Senate last year with bipartisan support, the vote of 32-2. The only difference between that version of the bill and the committee substitute I'm presenting today is the removal of a section which created a new separate flex designation for homeschool students who participated in taxpayer-funded activities or utilized ESAs. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Yes, Senator Arthur.
Thank you for the reminder about the Senate voting this legislation out last year. I know there have been different versions filed in the House and over the last few years. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you think this is the best version? Do you know how your bill differs than the one filed in the House?
I'm not sure if there's more than one House version or.
Yeah, there are a couple of different versions out there.
Okay, I'd be happy to take a look at those.
I would say I'm supportive in concept, but maybe
Okay.
we can compare and contrast and see what makes the most sense.
I believe there was one version that was more similar to the version I had last year, which had the separate flex designation. There might be another version also which I haven't taken a look at this point, but be happy to look into that and kind of provide a breakdown of the differences between that bill and what mine has.
Thank you. Thanks.
Further questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, are there any witnesses here to testify in support? Please come forward. Make sure you fill out a witness card. Proceed when ready.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name is Jonah Speaker. I'm here testifying in support of Senate Bill 819. You may recognize me because I've testified before the Committee on Education on multiple occasions, and I have been here and testified since the beginning of my 6th grade year, and I am now a senior, graduating in 2 months. So this issue's been around a long time, and we're just trying to get it across the finish line this year. You may be wondering what the problem with our current system is for homeschool students to be able to participate in extracurriculars at their local public school. Well, under the current Missouri State High School Activities Association policy, a homeschooled student must enroll in 2 classes at the public school in order to participate in athletics. However, individual school districts can and are more restrictive, causing an inconsistency across the state. Some people in some school districts are allowed to participate, while others in neighboring school districts are completely banned. Today, for the testimony, I brought my letter jacket. It's there behind me, just as a little bit of a visual. Some homeschool students in some districts are allowed to compete and alongside their public school peers and have a letter jacket and be a part of the community and get all those postseason honors, while others are still completely banned from participating in athletics at their local public school. This issue was a very personal one to me. As a second grader, I attended my local public school. I was a very energetic kid, and I had trouble sitting still for long periods of time. That prompted my parents to homeschool me, and during my years of education at home, I was transformed from the kid who could not sit still to the high school senior who's testifying before you today. I participated alongside my public school peers until I reached 7th grade, where I was no longer allowed to participate because of MSHA rules. I was cut off from the community that I had built for years. However, when I went into high school, my local school district reevaluated their policy, and I had to participate in 4 classes at my local public school to participate in athletics. However, at home, I was still doing 100% of the normal homeschool workload, so I was doing about 150% of a normal high school workload, which was very difficult. So after that year, I went back to the school board and I told them that it was not feasible for me to do both, and they reevaluated their policy and brought it down to the MSHA standard of 2 classes per day. The problem with the current system now is that the standard is not equal across the state, and that's what we are desiring to change here. So it's not some kids in some school districts are allowed to compete and others in other school districts are not. My experience at Webb City High School, where I've been participating, is definitely one I will never forget, and I have memories and friendships that will last a lifetime, and it breaks my heart that other kids in school districts across the state don't get that same opportunity. I'm here today asking you to support Senate Bill 819, which will allow homeschoolers to participate in extracurriculars at their local public school. There are people who came before us testifying for this legislation, and there's going to be people that come after us testifying for this legislation. So let's just get it done for their sake, and have the equal standard across the board. So I urge you to vote for Senate Bill 819, which would allow all homeschoolers across the state the opportunity to participate in athletics at their local public school.
Thank you for that testimony, for being here this morning. Questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Further witnesses here to testify in support? Seeing none. Any witnesses here to testify in opposition? Seeing none. Any witnesses here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing one.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Dent-Breen. I'm a homeschool mom from Independence. And I just wanted to offer our perspective. We've been talking a lot this session. And I wanted to personally say I thank you for hearing what we were saying. Our request with all of these bills that she referenced has remained consistent. As far as flex designation, we want that not in our homeschool statute. I think that we've been really pretty clear about that. If the legislature wants to do something along the lines of flex or call it something different or whatever, we want that defined elsewhere, not in our homeschool statute. This bill, as it sits, is what we have been asking for, just a clean bill. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it or support of it, just information, but it's a clean bill that just allows homeschoolers to participate with less regulation and less interference from the state, and that's a good thing in our opinion. I know that in the original bill that was filed, there was also a section that was striking the optional declaration of enrollment and the attendance officer. I don't know if that is standing now. Can I ask him that? Oh, that is standing. So we definitely are, sorry, I might be out of order here. We definitely are happy to see those two things go, so.
Thank you for that testimony. Any questions for this witness from the committee?
Yeah.
Senator Gannon.
Yes, I'm just curious, and either one of you can answer this. We're talking sports, but could a homeschooler join a club that the public school offers? Would this bill cover that possibly?
So yeah, it would include that as well. Some clubs might have a correlating course during the day, in which case the school could still require attendance
Okay.
with that particular correlating course.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to just add, I'm sorry, just
Oh,
wanted to add
proceed.
that some of the other bills that we've seen coming forth this year, that has been one of the questions that we've had, is that they have expanded just from, the original question was MISHA's requirement for high school students to have seated classes, and some of this legislation we've seen come forward has expanded to say if you participate in any activity of the school from K through 12, and that is certainly bothersome to us.
Any further questions for this witness from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you again for being here and for that testimony. Any further witnesses here to testify for Senate Bill 819? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you again for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Senator. That will conclude the public hearing for Senate Bill 819. With no further business coming before the committee, we are adjourned.